those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeff Morris. I am the Economic Development Division Director for the City of Miami Beach. I hope most of you know me by now and have been to a whole bunch of our other meetings, because we've probably done in the last 3 years about 24 public meetings of different kinds. Before, again, we jump into this, I also want to make you aware that next Wednesday night, September 7th, at the North Shore Youth Center, we're going to be hosting a meeting that will be the kickoff for the North Shore Open Space Park Master Plan. So those of you who are interested in what's going to happen at the park, please come to that meeting. It'll start at 6 o'clock over at the North Shore Youth Center. For those of you on the email list, I will make sure that continues to go out. We've sent it out once already. So if you didn't write it down, don't remember, don't worry, we'll let you know about it. Okay, all those aside, thank you all very much for coming out for the unveiling of the North Beach Master Plan. It's been a long road going through this with our consultants, Dover Cole. We've had some great support throughout the city. I do want to recognize our city elected officials who are here tonight, because they've really been behind this effort and have been really working with the community to try to make some great things happen. I think I'll start with Vice Mayor Michael Grieco. Much like some of our other commissioners, Commissioner Ricky Ariola, Commissioner Kristen Rosen-Gonzalez, Commissioner John Alleman, Commissioner Mickey Steinberg. We also have with us too, one of our greatest supporters has also been District 4 Commissioner from Miami-Dade, Sally Heyman. Her aide, Alexis Mosley, is with us. She's been working as well. The Commissioner really extended her support to North Beach and what we're doing here as well. So this is a great time for North Beach. There's a lot of desire to make some things happen, some good things. I want to caution you as we go through this. One of the things I see on social media that I've heard from some folks that are concerned about this is what this plan does. You need to understand one very important thing about this plan. What this is sort of the direction we want to go. This doesn't set policy. This doesn't set regulation. This doesn't say we are going to do this. This is a roadmap for the community to get to where you said we want to be. And by we, it's everybody that's come to all the meetings. We've done our best to, in a lot of instances, compromise. So what I would suggest to you is don't look at what isn't in here that you want. Look at what you get from this plan and the direction we're heading. Anything in this plan, transportation issues, housing issues, will have to go individually before the commission at some point in the future. So there will be more public input, more hearings, more items before the city commission, before the planning board, before the historic preservation board. So there's still lots of opportunity for input. These items, because this is a long-range plan, this is a 30-year plan. These things are not going to happen the day after we adopt a plan. We've looked at those long-range things. Transportation, many people have said, I've heard a lot of people saying, well, the minute this happens, the roads are already crowded, they're going to get worse. There are plans to deal with our transportation network before buildings get built, before transportation changes happen. We're not stupid. We know these things are important to you. You've told us they're important to you, and we've made sure that they're in the plan. The commissioners wouldn't let us move forward if these things didn't make sense. So please keep an open mind, understand what this is we've all said we want to go to the beach. Our consultants have helped us devise a plan that says, well, you might want to go this way. It didn't say you have to go this way. It didn't say make sure you end up at this square foot at the end of the street. It said you told us you want to go there. Here's a good way to get there. So, as I said, keep an open mind. We tried to make sure that there were a lot of things touched in this. There are things that will not be talked about in the presentation because the document itself is almost 200 pages long. So before you want to say something's not there, please take a look at the plan. It is posted at the project website, which is www.plannobe.org. N-O-B-E.org. Just go to the resources tab. The most recent version of this is at that site, as well as every other version we've had before. All the presentations, this presentation will be there. There will probably be some minor modifications before this goes to the commission. The commission is anticipated to consider this document at their October 19th meeting. So we will probably have some minor modifications. I do not expect anything that will materially change the recommendations, the projects, or the programs outlined. We'll change a couple of words, most likely. That's about it. So don't panic when you hear that there's some modifications that might happen. Anytime we modify, again, I will note it on our Facebook page, North Beach Revitalization, for those of you that haven't liked the page yet, as well as send emails out, and an updated plan, again, will be posted to plannobe.org. So we're trying to make it as open and transparent as possible, and you can see as we're moving forward. All right? You ready to hear what we got?
Yeah.
Okay, I talk way too much. I'm going to turn it over to Jason King of Dover Coal, who's going to start us through what the plan actually tells us.
So my name is Jason King. Our firm gets to work all over the country and all over the world. This time, we're working locally. I've been a Miami Beach resident for 11 years, and this is a very important plan for us and for me personally. Arnaud and I are at the head of a large, multidisciplinary planning team that has been working on this plan for almost a year now. The purpose of the plan is to create an economic and revitalization strategy for the North Beach district of Miami Beach. Right? And the plan is also to build on the work that's been done before and all of the great initiatives that are happening on the beach. So, you know, this is a commission that every month passes very important ordinances. Those are part of this. There are transportation plans, climate adaptation plans, there's affordable housing plans. This document attempts to pull all of those initiatives and the preservation groups and the neighborhood associations. The idea is to create a framework, to create an overarching document. That's what this kind of plan is. On the cover of the plan, we put this image, right? What we do as planners is we try to find the consensus. What can everyone agree on? That's the basis of the plan. And what we suggest to you is the idea that 71st Street still has its best days ahead of it. 71st Street can become a local neighborhood main street that's vital, pedestrian friendly, active, mixed use, commercial and retail and restaurants and people living above. So you don't have to drive to South Beach or to Wynwood or to Surfside or to wherever. Actually, all of the things that you need in a week or in a month, or even perhaps all of your daily needs could be satisfied right on the beach, and ideally within a short walk away for most people. In one image, that's the goal of this plan. Now, since the last time we met, the plan has been public for 2 months now, the first draft of it. We've been getting letters of support quite often. People are taking the time to actually write letters. This was an important one. This is from the owner of Cafe Prima Pasta, which is one of those important landmark destination restaurants that you guys have here in North Beach. And he said, as a Miami Beach business owner, I'm happy about this plan and I'm excited about the work that you're doing. So there's been that, and that's very exciting. At the same time, this area has lost some very important historic structures, right? With the loss of the Tropic Air Hotel, for instance, a structure that could have been easily readapted. A lot of people have been wondering if this is the moment, that galvanizes the historic district, the historic advocates. So this, in the time of the creation of this process, since our first meeting, November 23rd of last year, historic assets have been lost. It gives a real urgency to this plan. And then there's this. I have to bring this up because every time we do a meeting, I just heard about this in the lobby. There's the idea that has been suggested to us. The plan cannot answer this question. I leave this to you tonight. The theory is, and I've heard this many times, I cannot substantiate this, that Normandy Shores here and Normandy Isle was shaped in the way it was shaped in order to resemble Paris, with the Normandy waterway acting like the Seine River, and there's a suspicious resemblance between the streets that are happening in Paris. The Rue de Calais is somewhere near Calais Drive. So this is interesting. Have you ever heard this before? Right? No. Okay.
Nope.
There's a couple of people who have raised their hands. So this is a question the plan cannot answer. This is one of those things that the plan is just going to have to leave to future generations to puzzle upon and to come up with. It's not in the plan, but I thought I should bring it to your attention because it is just so interesting. Right? The first page of the plan is the table of contents, has the background, then the 5 big ideas, and then the action steps, how we're moving forward. That's going to be the agenda for tonight. And we're going to hit the big ideas as part of this project. And this is a very good time to say, these are not really the consultants' ideas. The ideas came from the public, and the ideas really came from our steering committee. Margaret Ramus, Brad Vanessa, Carolina Jones, Nancy Lehman, Kirk Pascal, Betsy Perez, and Daniel Veitia. These are the people whose ideas we get to get credit for, standing up here with this microphone. They did a great job of mediating all of the conflicting interests, right? Trying to find the middle ground. They themselves represent developers and naturalists and preservationists. They're community advocates, they live here, they're also business people. So they really helped to represent the community at large. So we're indebted to them for this. Let's talk about the timeline and the public process that got us to this point, and then we'll talk about the 5 big ideas.
Thank you. My name is Hernan Guerrero with Overcall Partners. I see a lot of familiar faces. Can I get a show of hands? We should have done this earlier, but can I get a show of hands for who has come to any of the meetings or participated during the charrette? Okay, so I see we have maybe roughly like a 1/5 of the room. So we have a lot of new people in the room, so welcome to everyone. Very happy to see this kind of turnout for this presentation. So I will give you a quick overview of what the project timeline has been. We started, as Jason mentioned, on November 23rd. We had a project kickoff at the North Shore Youth Center and did most of the data analysis during the month of December and January, preparing for our site visit and tour. We had a bus tour that started right here at the O Cinema. It was the first tour that was live streamed. I've heard it was so successful that many people have requested that every meeting now be live streamed. We then had the charrette in February, from February 11th to the 18th, and for many of those who participated know that we basically set up a studio right here at the O Cinema and the offices next door. We presented the draft plan on June 8th at the beginning of the summer and have worked throughout the summer to try to finalize the plan to present the proposed draft plan that you have before you tonight. This is a plan that is still receiving feedback and comment from both the steering committee and the city staff, and so we hope that adoption meetings will happen later on this fall. As we move forward tonight, the presentation will include some spreads, a couple of pages from the report itself, which is available via our website, as was mentioned before, as well as the city website. The study area roughly ranges from 63rd Street to 87th Terrace, the border with Surfside, from the Atlantic Ocean to the Biscayne Bay, including Normandy Isles, Normandy Shores, Parkview Island, Biscayne Point, Biscayne Beach, and Stillwater Drive. We didn't start this process in a vacuum. We started off looking at the 1994 DPZ plan, and then looked at other very important plans, including the North Beach Town Center plan, the Transportation Master Plan, which was recently adopted actually in the month of April, I believe, during the course of this project. I should say also that the sub-consultant that worked on the transportation and mobility section of this report was also one of the authors of the Bike and Pedestrian Master Plan, which is a companion to the Transportation Master Plan final report. We also looked at the City of Miami Beach Blueways Master Plan and the North Beach Town Center District bulk study analysis performed by Shulman Associates. So the charrette was really the starting point for a lot of the ideas that we generated in their feature in this report. It was a week-long event that started off with so we have a picture of the kickoff and the bus tour. It started off with a hands-on design session, which was very well attended. We had over 220 participants, many different stakeholders with many different interests, ranging from historic preservation to parks, development, etc. Everyone came and contributed their ideas, put their ideas to paper on maps, And that really became the basis for the information that we brought back to the offices back here. And worked on during the course of the week. We brought back a lot of the ideas that were listed on the map and created an overall synthesis map, which was basically just a summary map, including all the different ideas that everyone spoke about. And we held a number of technical meetings as well during this process. The public meeting was the first one with hands-on design session, but in order to really get the most traction from the ideas, we really needed to meet with the people that had the information about specific topics. So we had meetings about development with property owners and companies, business owners and residents, with the steering committee, with neighborhood associations. We had a technical meeting about affordable workforce housing, about sea level rise, about parks and recreation, economic development. Members of the Chamber of Commerce were in attendance for that one, historic preservation, band shell operators, etc. One of the exercises that we also started with during the charrette was a goals poster where we tried to identify what the main priorities were for the issues that were most important to stakeholders. Number one we found was adding new retail and entertainment for residents. Number two was creating walkable and bikeable places. And number three was maintaining the neighborhood scale in residential areas, basically maintaining the character of the area. We also had a one-word card that asked participants to use one word to describe the area now and one word to describe how you would envision this area in the future. So that gave us this word cloud for how people see the area today. We see words like the area is dated, dilapidated, depressed, heavily trafficked, homelessness, neglect, but also family-friendly, charming, livable, with potential, beautiful. And for the future, people saw it, the big words. The big words are the ones that came up most frequently. Revitalized, developed, vibrant, beautiful, a neighborhood, walkable, cultural. I think I see sexy somewhere in there. There it is. How could you do something on Miami Beach and not be sexy, right? Sorry. So one important thing that we like to do in most of our projects is at the end of the charrette, we do a work in progress presentation. It is not the end of the process; it's just a summary of what has happened during the week. And so we end the presentation with a survey, right? Asking, is the plan on the right track? So we see that 70% of people said that it was either yes or probably yes on the right track. We've also had a lot of press coverage throughout this time. Thank you to Joey Flechas and The Real Deal and other folks that have been covering this process throughout. Again, I'll reiterate, plannovi.org is where you can go and find previous studies, the current proposed master plan, and additional information about this process.
So there's a lot of ideas in the plan. If you had to boil it down to 5 big ones, the plan intends to make a town center, to provide more mobility options, to protect and enhance neighborhoods, and to better utilize all the public lands. North Beach has more public lands than any other part of the island, and build to last. In this age of strengthening storms and rising seas, the idea here in this plan is that the people of Miami Beach are here to stay, and how can we build in such a way that allows us to do that? Let's go through some of those ideas. On the topic of making a town center, this is the first time that a planning effort in this area has taken the time to meet with all of the members of the development community, all of the different property owners, while at the same time having a conversation with the public. And we created this very technical looking architectural plan for the town center, you see. Joe Cole is an architect by training, one of the principals at Dover Cole. He worked with the property owners and the developers. He found a lot of issues that had to be contended with, both physical and regulatory. And working with them, he created for the first time a feasible. It's more than just a vision. It's a broad, sweeping, exciting vision for the town center, but it's also step-by-step implementation steps. And that's contained in the illustrative master plan. It's hard to read a plan like that. Suffice to say, what's important is that small moves happen in the short term. Small moves that will actually build confidence in the larger plan. And so the plan looks at the first 3 development opportunities, and then looks at areas that can transition over time. With the closing of the bank, with the high vacancy rates, with the one-story structures that are here, the place really is ripe for change. At the same time, North Beach has some of the best restaurants, I think, in Miami. The developers and the owners of these properties are interested in keeping these unique, places, these destinations. I don't think you're going to see Prima Pasta replaced by a Chili's, right? These are institutions that have been here for a long time, and the development community is working on including them as the place changes. So improvement, enhancement, but not a loss of what's great. In one image, this is sort of an aerial view looking down 71st and looking over to the ocean, right? And some of the things that you see in a rendering like this is a mix of uses, exciting things happening on the street level. You see these setbacks that would basically, so that way if you're on the street, you're looking at 4-story structures. And then the setbacks are occurring, and that allows light to continue to fall on the street. Your experience is of a human-scaled environment, instead of being overwhelmed by massive structures and a sort of dark canyon-like effect. The plan is talking about 12 stories, sometimes 5, sometimes it can go up high enough if FAR is accrued, if the setbacks are met, if it becomes possible, up to 12 stories. So it's not like New York City, 70 stories, right? We're doing the plan in Jeddah, in Saudi Arabia. That's 100 stories. Here we're talking about 12 stories. Trying to keep a human's height. Trying to maintain as best we can the feel of a small-scale beach town. The plan makes a big statement about preservation, not just in the neighborhoods, but also along that corridor. Because there are some very important structures that we want to see retained. And then, once you get to the ocean, the idea of continuing that boardwalk all the way across. So that way people can move all the way up, all along the island. Not just a street that has bicycle facilities along with traffic, but we're talking about protected bike lanes. So that way there's bikes, it goes like this: sidewalk, and then bikes, and then cars, parked cars, and then moving vehicles. So that way you can actually have your kids ride bikes on 71st. Imagine that. Think about how perilous 71st is right now as a pedestrian, and as a cyclist, forget about it. In order to be a great main street, it's got to have all modes of transportation. Wide sidewalks and ample space to move. On the topic of providing more mobility options, there's a shift going on in Miami Beach, a shift from automobile to other modes, to walking, to bicycling. Now, right now in North Beach, people are already getting by. So let's do this, let's ask. How many people in this room came here, not by car, okay, but by bus, by walking, by bike, or even by just sharing a vehicle with someone else? All right, so do that, right? So a third to half of people. That's great, that's a lot to work with. Into the future, you've heard about how younger people are less interested in owning cars. People like the idea of walking around. It's an amenity that communities are offering now. We expect that shift to continue. If we asked that question, how many people did not get here by cars 20 years ago, no hands would have gone up. In the future, next time we ask it, in 20 years from now, a lot more of the room. So there's a shift going on. At the same time, the reality is, at the same time, the majority of us are using cars for, at very best, if we could go from 75% of trips in North Beach happening by cars to 50% of trips by North Beach, it would change the character of the whole place. It would feel like an island community again. The plan talks about the addition of bike facilities, all the major, minor arterials, wherever we're able to fit it comfortably, bike facilities. It talks about enhanced transit. If we are, you can't be blamed for driving everywhere right now. The bus system is not bad compared to a lot of places, but relatively infrequent, relatively unreliable. You're walking on hot streets without shade. It's going to take more transit, and this is a commission, and this is a city that's been committed to increasing transit options, and that's exciting. There's a lot of street redesigns in the report. Essentially what's happening is we're right-sizing the streets. So that way we're giving more space over. Cars don't need 15 feet travel lanes. The widest vehicle is only 8 feet. We can take some space out of that and then make the cars move a little more carefully. And with that space, we can actually create the bike facilities and the sidewalks. Now, if you read the article today in the Herald, there are people very concerned about the idea of losing travel lanes, especially losing, let's say, the turning lane on 71st. One thing the plan makes clear is that it is not time for that yet. 71st carries a lot of traffic. Most of you are going in and out, taking 71st. The whole downtown concept is going to have to be quite far along before it's time to remove that turning lane or remove any transit lanes. It's an important part of the plan. It looks at short-term, mid-term, and long-term improvements. Right now, 71st is the workhorse backbone road of this island, and we're not recommending any changes in the short term, except a little more space for pedestrians and a little more space for bicyclists.
Jason,
That's important.
Just to interrupt you real quick. One of those things that we said won't happen for a while, and of course Jason subtly said not happen for, will not happen for several years. Long time plan. Just want to make sure everybody understands the day we adopt this plan, if the commission chooses to do so, this isn't going to happen the next day. So really, we understand the issues here. We're going to work through them. This is what we're hoping to get to. Sorry, I just have to be a little really obvious about something.
God bless him. Jeff's got like a New York directness, right? Do you understand what he's saying? He makes it very clear, even with the arm motions. Right? Absolutely, very close. All right, but there are still roads that should be transformed immediately. Okay, 72nd, for instance. 72nd, not this, not 71st, but go up the 72nd, and that's a street that has the youth center, it's got the school, it's got the educational facilities. The street is wider than this room, the cars are moving super fast, the kids are trying to cross, and that's a street where we could imagine an intervention very shortly. And that's one that the commission and the city engineers have already been talking about. It's this kind of thing. So right now you got 4 lanes, and these lanes are sometimes quite wide, sometimes they're 12 feet, the cars are moving super fast, and the kids are stuck on a little tiny 5-foot pink strip of sidewalk. Let's give them a bigger sidewalk, let's give them street trees and shade, and even a way so that way they can move up and down that street, and to the band shell, and over to the west, and over to the neighborhoods safely and comfortably. So some street improvements are in the future. Other ones, for the sake of safety, should happen very shortly. Download the plan, take a look at the different streets that you travel, and see if this is actually making your experience of those streets better. One street we have to talk about, Ocean Terrace, right? So when we first started this project, Ocean Terrace, the real estate project, was dividing this community. You remember that? You remember how we were all either anti-tower or pro-tower, and it was all that anybody talked about? Well, it's been a terrific thing to watch people sort of move from that topic. Not that it's not important, but move from that to talk about all the other things happening in North Beach. So this plan does not get into whether pro-tower or anti-tower. That was already decided by referenda. That happened before us. Thank God. Made our job a lot easier. What we did get into, though, is how Ocean Terrace right now is, it's not a cafe boulevard. Ocean Terrace is right there. It's on the water, adjacent to the beach, and yet it is used, and the people who frequent it often. But nonetheless, we could imagine something like this: a shared space, a curbless environment, a large plaza. Ocean Terrace with a little less parking could have much wider sidewalks, and you could have the cafe dining, and you could have the people being there. You could walk out. People have called it the Little South Beach, but it would be much better than that. The South Beach can get quite loud and vulgar. This would be a North Beach version of cafe society, and that's one of the things that the plan talks about. The other idea that we heard right from the charrette was, let's build parking garages where feasible on the outskirts, right? On the entryways, the gateways in. So that way people could park into a garage, and then they could take the trolley, or they could walk, or they could take their bike. And if we can essentially catch them, intercept them with parking garages at the gateways, we could actually see more people, more pedestrians, and less cars, and less traffic throughout the island. So the plan talks about that. On the topic of protecting and enhancing the neighborhoods, this plan and this team and everyone involved in this are just big proponents of Miami Modern, the MIMO. And the plan makes a very big statement about the preservation of historic structures. New to this latest version is a very detailed discussion of what makes great MIMO architecture, from the parapets to the coining, to the overhangs, to the eyelids, to the way the roofs are pitched. This is a plan that is attempting to get new development to look less monotonous, could be anywhere, glass and steel, and more like your identity that you have here in North Beach. It's very specific about how buildings could be treated in such a way as to maintain community character as you add. Now, the other thing that you know in this plan, the big idea is the idea of creating the local historic districts. Okay? It's been discussed, it's gone back and forth. Hopefully this is the plan, this is the commission that creates those historic districts. Now, we have to compromise in a world of sea level rise, compromise with a development community with investment-backed expectations. You know, we've got to imagine a historic district, a couple historic districts that protect the most precious assets. You see, this is what compromise looks like. This is a complicated map, but there's a whole lot of the RM1, the single-family house areas that are not covered in these colors. It shows, this map shows a mix. Blue for local historic districts, and yellow for conservation districts. In historic districts and in conservation districts, one is able to tear down non-contributing structures. There's a lot of non-historic, ugly, dilapidated, not working so well buildings in North Beach. We've got to be realistic about that. And there are buildings that just were never made to last and shouldn't be expected to. However, there is a human-scaled, convivial neighborhood there, which needs to be protected. So the plan uses a variety of local historic districts, national preservation credits, and facade improvement programs, conservation districts, transfer of development rights, and a historic preservation fund. As many tools as we could come up with to preserve the historic structures and still be equitable and fair to the development communities and to the landowners, we have employed with this project. In the conservation districts, if the area is not to be historically preserved, you know, with demolition delay and the maintenance, the structures have to stay, sometimes the structure will be replaced. What the plan talks about are guidelines. So, for instance, if you're in the RM1 area, if you're in these neighborhoods where a building is to be replaced, the building that comes in should be one that is comparable in scale and comparable in character and should have the same orientation to the street, you see? So there are some one-story structures where the water is seeping in and the roof is caving, and everyone is in agreement about those being replaced. What it shouldn't become is an 8-story structure or a 16-story structure. What the conservation district would do is allow buildings to be replaced with buildings that are in kind. You see, scale, the look would all be comparable. We can talk about that a little bit more later. Another issue that we heard with the charrette is the idea that with a lot of the repavings, with the addition of bulb outs in the neighborhoods, a lot of parking spaces were lost. So the plan spends a lot of time trying to recover the on-street parking that's needed in the neighborhoods in order to park. Now, as North Beach improves, we have to be careful that it not be a victim of its own success. Right now, North Beach is a good pocket of affordability. One can rent here, one can buy here, and live here in ways that you can't in South Beach or in Brickell, for instance. And so the plan is committed to making sure everyone who wants to stay gets to stay. Affordable housing, workforce housing. We're trying to avoid the gentrification that can sometimes happen without planning. There are places like Normandy Isles, where the fountain is, near 71st Street, where public investments have been made recently. This has been repainted, the plaza's been redone. And the plan tries to imagine how investments like that, public sector investments like the plaza, could be followed by private sector. This is an area, we'll go back. This is an area that, here's the fountain, right? Here's 71st, here's Normandy. Basically, if you go out of this theater and you take a left, you would reach the fountain. You know that the area. The one-story shops along this area have high vacancy rates. There's some assets. The New Indian restaurant, the sushi restaurant, right? The Italian restaurant. There are things that we do not want to lose. The French restaurant. But you could imagine that you could, in some areas, upgrade this area, improve the streets, make them more multimodal, add some stories by virtue of building up 1 or 2 stories, you'd be able to fix up the storefronts. We're not trying to blow things out and put in a Walmart. We're trying to protect, enhance, and build this area in a way that it could be everything that it could be.
Jason, real quickly, do I have to change any laws that would enable anything like this to happen right now?
That's right. No, Jeff, at the moment, so a lot of what we're showing in these plans is currently allowed by the regulations. Okay? And so what we're trying to do is provide a vision. This is important. If you don't say something about what you want in areas like this, other people will decide for you. And so, correct, what we're doing is showing what this could be, in many cases, based on the existing regulations. On the topic of better utilizing public lands, we talked about how this area has assets that nowhere else in really Miami has. Now, one, we're going to go to the most controversial one, because we don't want to waste your time. It's a crime to bore an audience. So you've read about this one, probably the Miami Herald. The 72nd Street parking lot provides right now a lot of inexpensive parking. It's a little secret. You go, you park at the parking lot, you walk over to George's for lunch, and you walk over to the beach. This is an important asset for the community. Now this area, if you look at the original plans, wasn't intended to be a parking lot. It was intended to be a park. Okay? And now you know that in its history, a lot of things have been recommended for it. Developers have come and said to the city, give us this, and we'll build you a movie theater with a luxury condo. Right? Other people have come and they've said, let's sink the parking in this area and let's build luxury 5-star condos. Generally, it's condos. Where the development community is very interested in this site, we've been working with the community to try to imagine how it could transform in a way that stays public. A big principle of this plan is that public lands must stay public. And we're trying to imagine how it could be returned to its original concept of a green. Parking could still be allowed, but accommodated in a more compact sort of way. This could be a spot for a public building. There's all variety of services that the area needs. But the plan has to be flexible. We're also imagining the whole space as a potential large green. And if we can't live without the parking, then we're imagining potentially a parking garage. Take all of those spaces that are spread out along the surface lot and build upward, and because you've built up, you're able to free up some of the land. This is another one of those ideas that assumes that this 71st Street area will become a downtown and parking will be provided. Without new parking garages being located here, we don't want to change anything about that parking lot. Until parking can be located in this area, we're not ready to create the park yet. But we think about the future, we plan for the future just in case. In time, I do believe you will have a center here. And in time, you could have a great recreational field and public space there at the 72nd Street surface lot. We just have to make sure, we just have to hold on and be careful that we don't make any decisions that foreclose a possibility of that being a great public space. You also know about West Lots. I can think of very few places in the country that have 8 blocks of city-owned land right across from a great amenity like North Shore Park. This is another thing we've got to be very, very careful with. And I tell you, the last plan that was adopted for this area basically just imagined taking those public lands and turning them into townhouses, with one of the 8 blocks reserved for community gardens potentially. That was a plan that was adopted. It's a plan which exists and that we need to know about. This plan takes that idea and throws it in the water. What we're trying to do here, working with our steering committee, was imagine how those public lots could remain public. Sometimes private and public uses could be used. There's two different scenarios. It's a little complicated, but what we basically did is we asked the community, what did you want to see in that area? And almost no one said exclusively townhomes. And so we imagined, if possible, a hotel, cafes and retail, civic. People talked about a competition pool. The All Wheels Park was discussed potentially for this area. The teen center, community gardens, parking garage, the grocery store, the house of refuge, a place where people could get high-quality medical facilities, urgent care, education linked to the university. So what we're trying to imagine is essentially this staying public, and occasionally a public-private opportunity could be put together in order so that way it could better serve the needs. If you live in the areas west of the west lots, there's really nowhere to walk to. There's no little grocery store, there's no little cafe in those areas. We're trying to imagine how whatever happens on these lots could be locally serving, potentially. There are guidelines. Whatever happens at west lots, we say needs to be an appropriate height. Not the 20 stories, but instead of 7. You have 2-story and 4-story structures, and we're talking about new buildings not overwhelming those. 81st and 85th Streets, the streets that go all the way through to the neighborhoods, we're talking about cafes or things that work for residents. On your walk to the beach, you should be able to stop, and buy a Coke or whatever. And so that's something that's talked about. And then right now, if the west lots are developed just as they are, there's only a tiny little 5-foot sidewalk next to very fast-moving columns. And one of the guidelines is to make sure that things are set back so that we could create a great street along Collins. Something like this, potentially. A lot of those lots should remain public, but there could be certain opportunities where you could create a showcase landmark place right across the street from the park. What's important about the buildings is that they not be too high, but that they frame the park. Quite often, one's experience of the park is made a lot better by the ability to sit at a cafe afterwards and to have a coffee. You see here the idea of making Collins a much more multimodal street, one that could accommodate bikes and transit, and one that's easy to cross with the wide sidewalks. That's right, creating a two-way street. What if? Okay, so the first article that I read about North Beach when I first started this project was this one in the Miami New Times. And it said, North Beach is the best neighborhood in Miami, and it listed the reasons why. And this became, for our team, the goal was to not to change North Beach in a way that would ruin this. It's affordable, it's family friendly, it's small scale, it feels like a beach community. It's a jewel in the rough in a lot of times, but it is a jewel. And what I am very excited to report is we've had a very long process, we've involved a lot of owners, we've involved a lot of members of the public, and we're able to deliver to you a report, a plan, a vision that will not make this place, that will make North Beach better, that will protect and enhance. And all the great things about North Beach will stay that way. Now let's talk about resilience in the age of climate change.
Exactly. So on that topic of preserving and enhancing neighborhoods, the topic of building to last and the topic of resilience is a very important part of the plan, right? It is one of the biggest issues that we are facing. The idea of the sea rising is a reality. Storms are intensifying, as we have seen over the last couple of days. Seems like we've dodged a bullet, at least for the near future. North Beach must adapt, right? This is the bathtub model that illustrates what would happen if we didn't do anything. How would sea level rise affect North Beach, right? So with 1 foot of sea level rise, you wouldn't see too much impact. But with 2 feet, you begin to see a lot of water flooding the streets. 3 feet, even more, 4 feet, 5 feet, and then 6 feet. Notice 2 things, that the barrier island, right, the area closest to the ocean is actually the area that is highest in the beach. However, note that the clubhouse at the golf course in Normandy Shores will still be open. The threat, what are the challenges? most of you may know that we live in a area that has a porous limestone substrate, and so the issue for us here in Miami Beach in South Florida is different than the issue that other areas are dealing with, like say New York, or we hear a lot about adapting adaptive strategies that are being taken on in places like Holland and Belgium. They can build up there because they have bedrock. We are dealing with the issue in a more complicated way, right? Because we're dealing not only with issues like sea level rise itself, stormwater, and storm surge, right? The problems to solve. In order to address sea level rise, raising buildings and walls is a strategy that needs to be adopted. Currently, the city of Miami Beach has invested well over a couple $100 million in raising streets, and they're beginning and installing new pump stations. Eventually, seawalls will be raised as well. They have been in certain areas. You may know the Sunset Harbor area, further south in South Beach, as well as West Avenue and 10th Street, right? Those streets have already seen some street raising, roughly about 3 feet. And so, for an area like Miami, which is very, for the most part, flat, you're right, there's not a lot of differences in topology. It might seem like a huge issue, but certainly this is not something that would necessitate tearing down all of the buildings currently, right? Raising the streets will definitely affect the built environment as most people currently know it. But if you go to Sunset Harbor, is a good example of what we may see in the future. The plan includes a map illustrating the road elevations for the right-of-ways, right? And so here's a quick cheat sheet. Roughly the areas that are painted in red are over 7 feet. The areas that are dark blue, light blue, or yellow, and will be raised to 3.7 feet. Those areas are currently below 3.2 feet and will be raised within the next 5 to 10 years to 3.7 feet. So generally, roughly, the areas that are closest to the waterways, apologies, are very low and are the areas that are most vulnerable. Again, the areas that are most resilient and are the highest are the areas east of Harding and Collins, right? Beach renourishment is another strategy for protecting the beach from this community from the threat of storm surge. The threat of storm surge is something that happens when there are major storm events. The water starts to boil, the water starts to rise, and you may potentially see, during Hurricane Sandy, some areas saw 25 to 30-foot waves. A wider beach basically gives that protection for the built environment from a potentially 25 to 30-foot wave. Currently, there's a beach renourishment project going on in Mid-Beach. Unfortunately, beach renourishment is a very complicated issue. It's very costly, and it's complicated by the fact that water action creates erosion, right? And so you have erosion hotspots in certain areas. And so over time, the city of Miami Beach will have to, keep abreast of new technologies that are coming available to be able to reduce the cost of renourishing these beaches and maintain these necessary protected areas. Another idea, this is an idea that's coming from places like the Netherlands and Belgium, is the idea of building a parking structure within a dune. The North Shore Open Space Park is naturally high and already has sort of a dune. So imagine if a place like that had a parking structure within a dune. I'm not suggesting that that's what really needs to happen because it's a park, but the idea here is that a dune structure facing the ocean could be reinforced and serve a dual purpose of parking cars. What happens in these structures is that, as I mentioned before, sometimes with a huge storm, with a storm surge, these dunes could be subject to erosion. The parking structure underneath it would be built out of cement, so it would be something permanent there. Of course, if water rose, then there would be a potential for these structures to be inundated, so they would have to have functional pump mechanisms to be able to, pour out and pump out some of the water. And now we move on to the next chapter, which is the final chapter, the implementation section, the action steps. We are only illustrating a couple of the action steps here by topic, but certainly go and download the report, please, and look in detail at what is listed there. I'm just going to go through a couple of these. As far as historic preservation, the recommendations that we make are to create and promote local historic districts, as we mentioned before, to create neighborhood conservation districts, to create a transfer development rights program, a TDR program, and or a historic preservation fund as a tool to both incentivize the development in the town center and preserve historic properties, and potentially also assist property owners with raising or adapting their structures for sea level rise. For mixed income and affordable housing, recommend that the city explore public and private partnerships to create a mix of income ranges. For public lands, all changes in use of public properties should involve a deliberative process following plan guidelines. This plan's guidelines. Climate change strategies make North Beach a priority when making resilience investments and implementing capital improvement projects. And so what that means is that as capital improvement projects are going in, that the city should be mindful of making sure that whatever capital improvement projects are moving forward can benefit from any other projects that might be going on. So if there's a new development project that's coming forward, or if new sewer storm pipes need to be installed, the city should make sure that all the departments are coordinating so that, as may happen sometimes throughout the country, in other places around the country, we're not the only place, where sometimes, the Department of Transportation will go out and resurface the streets and then find out that the Department of Public Works had a project to replace storm sewer pipes a year down the line. And so that basically necessitates the Department of Transportation going out and resurfacing the streets again. So for that's why we make that recommendation. We also recommend that the city codify modifications of height of ground floor levels to accommodate for raising of streets and buildings. So that could be a strategy to mitigate the potential negative effect or negative impact or just the change in the built environment that I was describing before and illustrating that's going on in Sunset Harbor, places like West Avenue and 10th Street. For mobility, we recommend that complete linkage to South Beach for the North Beach trolley. I believe that the Mid Beach trolley, correct me if I'm wrong, may be coming, rolled out this fall, sometime this fall. I was going to say September, but this fall is fine. Moderate expectations. Create dedicated bus lanes in the town center. Create protected bike lanes and implement bike infrastructure improvements. And study the two-way of Collins and Harding Avenue. During the charrette, we held a technical meeting with folks from the FDOT, Florida Department of Transportation, as well as our sub-consultant, Tony Garcia with Street Plans, who was part of the Transportation Masterplan. And what we heard was that that they did not move on this because Surfside was interested, and Surfside apparently was not sure whether Miami Beach was interested or not. So I think it's good news to say that FDOT seems to be open to the possibility of two-waying Collins and Hardings, and so that's a conversation that needs to continue, that needs to evolve, that needs to continue between the city, the Department of Transportation, and neighboring municipalities. For the development process, during the charrette process, we also learned that there are some challenges to developing in North Beach. And so for that reason, we are recommending that the city create a streamlined application process for the town center specifically, but also to foster the redevelopment or revitalization of other areas of North Beach. Some of the regulatory changes included considering the removal of parking requirements for projects that are less than 25,000 square feet. And eventually, in the near future, once the mass transit system, the protected bike lanes, and all the mobility improvements have come forward and made getting around this area less of a problem, consider reducing parking requirements further, potentially eliminate them completely. Require that all floors in a parking structure be lined with usable spaces. Another recommendation that's in the report that's not here is also recommending that any future parking structures that are built should be built in such a way that they could be retrofitted. There is this, there's this reality of self-driving vehicles that is moving forward. Some of you may have heard last week that Ford and Uber announced that I think Ford said by 2021 they will be rolling out a fleet of fully self-driving vehicles. So that's a reality that is coming forward. In fact, Miami-Dade currently is testing commercial vehicles, trucks that are self-driving. Broward County is the test ground for personal vehicles that will be self-driving. I see some heads shaking, but the reality is that if it weren't self-driving vehicles, the ownership of vehicles is also changing. And so ride-sharing companies such as Uber and Lyft are making it easier for people to not have to use a personal vehicle. A lot of people are actually using Uber to get to work. I have heard some figures from city officials. I don't have the exact statistics from anywhere else, but I've heard anecdotally that at least 30% reduction in personal vehicle use has already happened, and that people are already using Uber and Lyft to get to work on Miami Beach. As far as building orientation, we are recommending that frontages, so frontages are the front of the building, so the Byron Karloff Theater fronts 71st Street. Frontages, build high quality frontages that define streets and public spaces as places of shared use, right? And for height and FAR, final recommendation, we're going to wrap it up after this, and open it up to the floor for quick questions and answers, is height and FAR. Raise the maximum height to 12 stories along 71st Street. That was already approved by the commission. And to create a one town center district out of TC1, TC2, and TC3. And the last thing that I will say on that point is that this is in fact a consensus plan, and one of the consensus was to, at the same time that as you were allowing town center additional densities in the town center, that the historic preservation should be moving forward. And so that is in fact moving forward. The Historic Preservation Board will be reviewing the issue of local designation at the October meeting of the October 12th meeting of the Historic Preservation Board. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone that has been a part of this process throughout the course of the last year almost. As Jeff mentioned earlier, there are still plenty of opportunities to continue to discuss these issues. They will come before the Planning Board, the Historic Preservation Board, the City Commission, and so certainly, stay in tune, and we look forward to seeing you throughout this process. We would like to, at this point, open up the floor for questions and answers, and I think we will do that for approximately 15 to 20 minutes.
I would also say we are a little handicapped. We only have the mic here. So if you have a question, please walk up so we can get you to talk on the mic. Come on forward. I would also once again remind everybody that anything we do is available on the www.plannobe.org website, the Facebook page, North Beach Revitalization. So you can stay in touch with what we're doing over the next couple weeks there. And you can also submit questions through both of those locations.
I hope that, my name is Susan White. I live on Parkview Island. I heard when you were talking about the public spaces, the southernmost space, you said something about education. Could that possibly be Miami-Dade coming here? I recommend Miami-Dade highly. I think that would serve our neighborhood for the kids who go to school, and they have so many programs at night with, look what they did with the book fair. It would just enliven the whole area. Miami-Dade is a wonderful institution to have here on the beach. Was that what you were referring to, or some other educational type?
They're a natural candidate. Miami-Dade College has acted as an economic engine in the downtown, and they serve a whole variety of students, traditional students and older students, and I think they'd be an excellent candidate. So absolutely point noted. The plan has a
The city has been in constant contact with the local universities and colleges since I got here, trying to figure out good partnerships to bring them throughout the city. So it's not off the table. I can't say that there's something specific we're working on, but we continue an open dialogue with them.
Students Bishop, and I live on Ocean Terrace. First of all, thank you, Dover College. Thank you to all our city officials. I think the plan is terrific. But it's a long-range plan, and unfortunately, it doesn't down. My question is very specifically, what are we going to see in, let's say, the next 5 years?
So the question was, just in case we're not all going to be around for the next 30 or 50 years, what are we going to see in the next 3 to 5 years that we can get excited about? We've had an opportunity to talk to a lot of the property owners and the developers around the 71st Street area, and I can tell you that you're going to see some interesting announcements about the creation of new cafe and potentially hotel and potentially mixed use and workspaces. So all along 71st. So I think in the next 5 years, you're going to have a reason to come to 71st, to this area, and you're going to find yourself sitting outside under an umbrella with a cafe con leche, and there's going to be cranes, and there's going to be new construction along here immediately. I also think you're going to see the addition of some bicycle facilities shortly that people are going to be able to take. Let's see. So those are the first ones that come to mind. Good question.
Some of the other things that we are working on and have funded right now are some new entrance signs in the North Beach area, some beautification to the bridge over the Tatum Waterway on 71st Street, because as we all know, it's pretty darn ugly right now. We're also continuing to work on expanding the plaza at the Normandy Fountain, trying to make that into a true public plaza by closing Rue Vendôme there between the shops and the fountain, and making that an open public plaza for various events and just for people to sit and eat, and attract some additional restaurants to the area where you can eat at that area.
My name is John Conti. I live on Parkview Island as well. And I just want to make a comment. The gentleman in the red tie asked all of us a very loaded question, how many of us walked here. We had to. There's no place to park. And we're going to take away your parking spaces. I've been here for over 20 years. And our building alone, the number of vehicles has tripled. And even allow people to park decently at our building. How are you going to keep cutting spaces?
We can't. In the short term, we cannot cut parking spaces. You cannot lose any on-street parking in this area. So 72nd retains the on-street parking. The way that we actually can narrow 72nd is actually just out of the travel lanes. In the rendering, you'll actually see that the on-street parking stays. But you make a good point. You know, the reason a lot of people came here is because there's no place to park, and a lot of people came super early just to make sure they had a parking spot. Parking has to be a big part of this project. Parking. There's a section that talks about parking. We need to create parking garages. We need to not just on the outskirts, but that's another good point. There's what the plan tries to do, and this is hard. This is one of the hardest things that planning does, is it attempts to find in the neighborhoods areas where we can actually create small parking lots, or even potentially two-story parking garages for the different neighbors. There's some public land that could potentially be used to that. So yes, you're right. This presentation maybe didn't talk enough about planning, about parking, but the future has to involve sufficient parking. So thank you, good point.
Hi, my name is Brad Benessi, and I am on the planning and the steering committee. Thank you. I'm losing my mind. This is pretty good. You guys are a little like, this is great. Come on, this is going to be great. No? Yeah, come on. Right. We haven't seen anything like this, so I'm very excited. Thank you for all the hard work. Just a quick question, and of course, you know, so many things came up, so many meetings, and when we're at the Unidad, one of the things that came up that seemed to get a lot of excitement. You know, South Beach got the $33 million beautiful South Beach Park. And in continuing with what we thought, and one of the processes was, we have the North Shore Open Space Park that we have $10 million for through a negotiation with the city. So that's going to be taken care of. So my thought process was, when we were doing this, with the beautiful the walkway that we have, that with the city may be taking an interest in the Ocean Terrace part and closing it off, making it more friendly for the public, for a walkway, closing it off, having either balance, you can close it off at certain times so your people can go up and down, make it more local friendly, and you'd have to relocate some of the parking, and maybe some of the parking would go to where the library is, and we build some sort of garage where the library is, something like that, and then continuing something like that. But it definitely needs to have what South Beach has. I think we deserve it, and it has changed on what you on your slide, because right here it does state. It says, what is key is that Ocean Terrace remains street accessible to all vehicle access, ample parking, bicycle lanes, sidewalks, and transit access. Residents will need to still maintain access to parking entrance located on Ocean Terrace, which is different, obviously, than the slide that you had. I just want to make sure everybody knew that it would be, but hopefully that we can still entertain this and go forward with having something that's a little more friendly for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Maria Alegría from Normandy Isles. Thank you. I appreciate that there's been a consultation process and what you presented as a vision. I'm one of the ones who is apprehensive about development because I don't want to change the density of our neighborhoods, and I'm really concerned around development, quite frankly. Getting rid of the parking spots in front of North Beach, I think, would be really perilous to changing. I hope that nothing changes about that park, because that park is just beautiful as it is. There is one institution I'd like to see improve, which is the library, which is not in any of the plan. The North Beach Library needs to really be expanded and grown and all of that. But I believe that we do need safer pedestrian and bicycle, but I don't believe we need more density and more urbanization. Thank you.
One of the things that has been contemplated back starting in about 2004 when the city adopted the town center plan is that the library would be relocated from its current location into the center of activity. So it was a little bit more comprehensive in making a community and also within the activity of things. This plan actually contemplates the location of the library having some retail and ocean rescue there, actually. That was one of the consensuses we heard from the public, was that they wanted Ocean Rescue to locate on that site. But it certainly is within the plan that we were talking about relocating the library, having it in a newer structure in a place that's a little bit more in the center of the community.
I would also urge you to to download the plan and read through it. You will find a section there on the library that addresses some of the issues. The plan is 191 pages, so it is a fairly dense document, but I believe that if you read through it, you will see that we have carefully looked at densification in the area. And so the idea of densifying the town center and preserving the neighborhoods is one of the compromises of the plan.
Is there a forecast of population change or density change that you can estimate?
Is there a forecast of population change or density change that we can forecast was the question. There is one in the city's comprehensive plan, in fact. And we don't know exactly for certain. There are projections that many folks are moving to the South Florida region overall, and so the South Florida region overall, I think, is supposed to increase by about 786 people a day are moving to South Florida. So we do need to accommodate the new people that are moving here, right? Somehow, and so we believe that a good compromise was to condense that densification in the town center, right? So that you could protect the neighborhoods.
One of the reasons also why I jumped up when Jason had showed us the area around the fountain and the larger buildings there is, those are essentially renderings of what the folks who own that property have the right to do now. It isn't an additional densification by regulation. It's that they could go and do that now if they chose to do so. There are certainly other issues they have to deal with. Where are they going to park cars, which might prevent some of that. But again, we did our best through this. I know Dover Cole worked really hard to not add additional development rights, but to work within what's there.
Good evening, my name is Francisca Medina. I'm a North Beach resident, and I do not in the intercept garages. I think parking should be in the neighborhood as you suggested, even if it's smaller units, especially as a resident, I would hate having to walk from the outskirts to my house. And the other thing I wanted to address is the public transportation. The trolley is lovely if you have time, but if you are on your way to work and you decide not to use an Uber, which not everybody does, you have to have reliable, fast public transportation, which we do not have. And yeah, I think that's really quite urgent and cannot be addressed enough. The last thing is local historic designation and preservation, which I think is also crucial. It should not be in pockets, just like in South Beach. It's the area that makes it attractive, not a cluster of buildings. That's what I wanted to address. Thank you.
By the way, for those of you who may see me with my phone, I'm not being rude, I'm actually posting to Facebook.
Hi, my name is Sandra Breiterman. I currently live in Mid-Beach, but I grew up here about 50 years ago. I'm curious, and I may have, this is the first time I saw it, and you kind of put it up there quickly. I haven't gone into the plannovi.org yet. But you made 71st Street the town center. When I grew up, it was Collins, it was 74th, and I guess to 76th or 74th and 75th was the town center. We walked everywhere. My grandparents didn't even drive, and they took buses, and we walked to restaurants, we walked to food shops. I'm curious why you did not make that part of the town center, or maybe I didn't look at the plan correctly.
Thank you so much for that. So you are correct, and what I would say is that things have changed very much, as you know. There are a lot more cars today, and so unfortunately, the amount of cars and the dependency that we have created placed on the personal vehicle has impacted walkability. And so the plan does talk about improving and building upon the improvements that, some of the improvements that have already occurred between 73rd and 75th, for instance. It also addresses creating some additional commercial locations along the west side of Collins Avenue between 72nd and 73rd, so where the 72nd Street parking lot is, precisely to recreate the connectivity between the businesses that are on the south side of Collins, south of 72nd, and north of 73rd, between 73rd and 75th. So there is a spread. When you download the presentation, the report, you'll see that there is also a spread that says connecting the dots, and it talks about the other areas of the neighborhood. However, yeah, why town center? Why it's not part of town center? Is because there is this swath, right? That we are trying to reconnect. Basically, create a civic swath from east to west, from the Atlantic Ocean through the North Beach Band Show, 72nd Street parking lot, turning that into a park, and then the youth center is also, so it would be civic and open space, swath from the ocean to the bay, and so that naturally kind of would demarcate the difference between south of 72nd and north of 73rd, but we do address reconnecting the commercial activities along Collins.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Jessica. I have lived in North Beach for 15 years. I'm the president of my condo association for the last 2. I would like to start with a question. Where is the current ocean rescue site?
It's on the west of around.
Like kind of in the park, east of the park, correct? East of North Shore?
It's on the west side of Collins.
Okay. So a few other things. Let me see. We love the trolley. we know it's planned to connect to North Beach and South Beach, correct? The loops?
That's correct. We expect Mid-Beach to be in place this fall, and there's some negotiation with the county going on, and we're hoping that we'll have South Beach in place in February, March.
That's fantastic. That's a great improvement. Also the pedestrian streets, and I don't know about Collins and Harding, how the two-way traffic will create more or less of an issue. I suspect more, but you guys have been planning. The parking on Ocean Terrace, I don't think needs to be removed, in my opinion. The buildings that are there, the historic, nice Art Deco buildings, are set back from the street at least 15 or 20 feet. There's lots of pedestrian area. Let me see. The crime here doesn't compare to South Beach. I feel like you're trying to create a new South Beach. South Beach has more homeless and more crime than North Beach. It's a fact. I feel like I speak for the community when I say we don't want a new Brickell here.
There's actually a page.
Okay. In one of in part of the presentation, you said that we don't need to leave North Beach to go to South Beach or go to Wynwood. I feel like the residents don't want to. We like North Beach. We like the vibe here. Okay. I feel like that maybe the local residents are a little late in the game, getting in, you know, and you guys are doing your final proposal now, but I'm here to speak for the community. Also, local businesses, how will they fare? Because I know when the whole construction on Alton Road and South Beach was going on, a lot of those businesses went under. They were really affected. So how will you mitigate that during the construction phase?
A construction phase that isn't gonna happen for probably a minimum of 10 years.
No, you said you should expect to see sidewalk cafes and cranes. Cranes affect traffic, they affect businesses.
That would be on private property. It wouldn't be anything that would really interfere with the traffic.
Okay.
The city always asks any developer doing to show us how they're gonna mitigate traffic if they're blocking a lane with a crane or something like
Right. The traffic through Surfside for the last 2 years was definitely affected by the private area construction. So we expect to see that in North Beach as well. Basically, to close, who do you expect to be the new homeowners and the new buyers of North Beach with the prices rising?
The people that would buy in any instance. The reality is, one of the problems that we have, one of the issues, and remember, I work for the city, not the consultant, but I can tell you one of the problems we have here in North Beach particularly is you have one of the very limited areas still available on the barrier island. Prices have been going up just because of location. If we change nothing, prices are going to continue to go up. We're really hoping, there is what, 5 pages of workforce and affordable housing recommendations. The hope really isn't, we're not looking that we're going to add a whole lot more units that fall into that realm. What we're really trying to do is make sure we can maintain units here in North Beach for some of the people that still live here, so that they can continue to live here. It is very important. There was not a lot of discussion here, but there is a number of pages dedicated in the plan to how are we going to deal with this issue. The city's been very sensitive. One of the things we've also done is an interesting side effect of Uber and Lyft has been that we're seeing less people parking in our parking garages. The city commission has essentially come forward with a policy that says if we build any future parking garages, they need to be designed so that we can transform them into workforce housing in the future if we don't need that parking. So it's a really interesting take. I don't know of any other place that's had that policy. And as we're looking forward, we're having those. There's certainly a push up here to look at a couple places for parking garages because we know we have a parking issue. So that'll certainly stay in mind. Sure.
There is a parking garage on 67th and Collins that's rarely used, that people are not addressing.
That's a private parking garage. The city doesn't own that garage.
Okay. I've parked overnight there. It was $20. I don't know how it is per hour. I've only used it once, but it's there and it's rarely used. And maybe some changes could go on there. The other thing is, you know, with Brickell and South Beach, you have a lot of overseas investors, the Panama Papers, in light of the vacation rental issue. I don't think people can afford that in North Beach. And you have efficiencies in South Beach that are over $1,000, you know, regularly. That's not workforce housing in North Beach. I'm a property owner. That doesn't affect me, but it affects my community, and that's my concern. Thank you.
I think when you get to know the plan, you're gonna like what you find in it. This is not the Brickell plan or the South Beach plan. This is a plan created by North Beach residents. This is the preservation plan. This is the protect plan. This is the enhance plan. This is small is beautiful plan. So I look forward to discussing it more with you after you have more of a chance to acquaint yourself with it. It's funny, you know, we tackle with these presentations the big issues, but there's a lot of really small improvements that this plan recommends to keep North Beach that I think you're going to like when you get a chance to see. Thanks.
Thank you for your work. Thank you for the stuff that you do for the community. I really appreciate all of that. I moved 15 years ago in Miami. I'm a proud homeowner in Miami Beach here in Normandy Isles, and I really, really look forward to the development of this community. I think it's very gainful for everybody here. I like the planning overall. The only major concern that I have is like some people tend to forget that we are also a transition place, which means from people who's moving from South Beach to North Beach, and the people who's coming to the beach to the west side. And most of those people are just using our traffic, I want to say, or our traffic lines or traffic space. The smallest piece access that we have is very loaded with cars, loaded with people who come from outside of the beach. And they are obviously welcome because they interact with our businesses and make the neighborhood more livable. But is there going to be any solution? Because I'm concerned about the closing lines, basically on 71st Street. And also when I see on 71st Street where we want to improve the business and the walk-through and the sidewalk, I don't see why we keep some parking spaces on that street, especially if we do some parking spaces at the entrance of the community. And also, would there be any residential parking solution for the residents who maybe just are disabled? Because I have my mother who's disabled and she needs to use her car even if she doesn't like it. I don't have time to push her around all the time, so she has to be independent. So would there be any solution for residential parking, especially for disabled or any other people who need this kind of parking solution?
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Thank you. Really good comments. Yeah, we have to be very careful about any loss of on-street parking because small businesses depend on that, especially here where it's like sidewalk business and they have no parking. So we've got to be, so the plan is not removing parking spaces because on those streets because we will lose those businesses. Now the other thing, to make an important point, the residential areas, you mentioned handicap accessibility and special parking facilities for the disabled. In the first two iterations of this plan, we were not getting into the neighborhoods and how to park those neighborhoods. And community activists, like a couple that asked questions, kept coming back and saying, no, there's parking problems in the neighborhoods. So what the plan, you'll notice in this plan, there's maps that show the different neighborhoods and that try to identify parking areas. Sometimes it's just one vacant lot that the city owns that could become parking. And those are areas that especially we have to look for handicap and disabled spots. So you make very, very good points. And thanks for your participation in the plan.
Hello, my name is Rembrandt. I'm a renter in North Beach. I've been living here for about 5 years or so, 5 to 6 years. And I want to echo the concerns that the lady in the green, forgot her name, also mentioned, Jessica, also addressed, which is the affordability factor. You mentioned there are at least 45 pages of it outlined in your proposed plan, but you really didn't own it on any, not even one or two topics. The gentleman before him, this gentleman sitting down, mentioned that there were only a small amount of units that you plan on, constructing or included in your plan that wouldn't cause too big of an effect to affect the affordability factor. But when they look at your plan, it's beautiful, but my biggest concern is, again, the affordability factor. How do we avoid a Brickell effect? How do we avoid a South Beach effect? How do we avoid gentrification and maintain the affordability in this neighborhood? Which, interestingly enough, you cited a newspaper article from the Miami New Times indicating North Beach is the best neighborhood in Miami, and here's why. One of those points indicated that same article that you outlined is all the money you're saving. What's that? It costs $1,000 for a 900 square foot apartment that comes with a pool, and you're a 5-minute walk from the beach. This is not South Beach.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, that Miami New Times article, it was something like 3 of the top 10 reasons that this is the best neighborhood in the city, the whole city. 3 of them could be boiled down to affordability. And so if this plan changes the affordability of North Beach, then this plan will have changed one of the critical pieces that make North Beach North Beach. And so we cannot do that. This plan, so how do we create affordable housing? 1, the preservation of the current historic stock. Right now, those buildings, those 2, 3, 4-story buildings, house the workforce for Miami Beach, right? And by preserving those units, we preserve affordability. Now, the plan also touches 1, historic preservation preserves housing affordability. Number 2, it talks about how when we build new units, it talks about the idea of inclusionary zoning ordinances. That means if you build 100 units, 10 of them have to be affordable, or something along those lines. So preserving new and building, or preserving historic stock and building new. Now, of those 2, the one that works most sure, the surest bet, is preservation. The reality is, when in this area, in Miami, when you tear down a building and build a new one, that new one is going to cost a lot of money. Just we have new codes, we have new materials than they used to have, and so preservation becomes the most important way to preserve affordability. If we weren't specific enough about that, let me say that that's the soundest way we know to keep as many people here as possible. Yes.
The other recommendation that we make, and this is, I think you will be happy about this, and I hope Jessica will be happy about this as well, is that we're recommending, there is an affordable housing committee that the city has. And so we are recommending that North Beach representatives be added to that committee to address that issue. The reality is that this is, besides sea level rise, preserving affordability and gentrification is one of the other most dire issues and topics of our time. So we have tried to address a couple of strategies by which that can be mitigated, hopefully, but residents are going to have to be active in advocating for this as well.
You can definitely count on me on being active in voicing that. Just to
I know how to get a hold of you. I'm gonna use you.
Thank you. But to counterpoint, the point that you indicated about is maintaining the historical factor of, I actually live in a building that I just learned through your presentation. There's 2 different designations, the neighborhood historic, the local, and then the national, or? Neighborhood. There's neighborhood and there's 2 levels, what were they?
Local historic and national historic.
Okay, so I live in the local historic, actually along Bay Drive. And if your efforts to actually maintain those buildings, as historically designated, there will be associated costs, obviously, in maintaining that preservation, which would mean clearly an increase for the tenant's rent. So, nonetheless, no matter which way you try to mitigate it, there will be associated costs, and it will affect the affordability factor.
That is a very good point. And but the reality is also that there is a lot of development interest in North Beach, and so to not plan for that would likely result in this gentrification just as well. Right?
So then the question becomes, whose interest are you really after? Are you really after the interest of the community or your larger stakeholders?
Yeah, what are you?
Yeah, the big question in planning is who are you planning for, right? So what this plan attempts to do is this. Everybody got something they were looking for, and no one got everything. We had to balance preservation versus development. We had to balance the needs of the residents versus the newcomers that are coming in. I will argue, though, that while historic preservation would cost, the building has to be fixed up, new plantings, often hurricane-resistant windows.
Coding.
Absolutely, and while there could be a cost to renters, I still think that's a better way to preserve renters than having buildings knocked down and turned into condos. So, affordability. neighborhoods right now. Anyway, you make really good points. We need more advocates for affordability at all of these meetings going forward as North Beach develops.
Hi, I'm Jennifer. I'm just wondering if there's interest from investors that are waiting for this plan, to actually come in and start working on these projects that are described.
Yeah, that's right. Is there interest in investors? Are there real investors willing to? Absolutely. The secret is out about North Beach. A lot of the people that were attending this meeting tonight were investors and property owners and developers looking to move into the area. The important thing that we do is we channel that effort to build a better North Beach through that. Now, we're gonna have to.
My name is Manning Salazar. I live in Normandy Isles, and I'm in favor, big favor of mass transit. But I'm really concerned about your plans because it reduces the traffic lanes, and the traffic is really bad the way it is now. You try to get off the beach between 8 and 9. You try to get up to Surfside at 4 o'clock. From Alton with the bridge over up to over to 71st Street. It takes maybe an hour, 45 minutes, and then so to have mass transit implemented in a way that reduces the traffic lanes, as opposed to maybe elevated mass transit or rail or something. I don't know. It seems to me you're trying to impose a vision that is maybe premature, and it's going to create a lot of headaches in this area. And I also want to echo the concerns about the person who spoke earlier about density. I think that when you reduce the traffic lanes and the increased density, when you build up, this is going to become a traffic nightmare, and we need to avoid that.
Noted. All right. Thank you all for sticking around. In the words of Brad Benessi, it's going to be great. Thank you for following the plan. A large plan like this requires everybody to take a piece and to move it forward. Thanks for your concerns. We're going to make the plan better by virtue of this conversation. And thank you for all of your time today. Have a good night.